Hey, Slick Talkers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. And I know that if you love this show, you'll also love my morning show called Good Morning Hospitality with my co hosts Michael Golden and Brandy Canali, as we spend 30 minutes every Monday morning to dive into the industry's top latest news and trending topics. So go check it out on wherever you find your podcasts at Good Morning Hospitality. And you can live stream with us on Monday mornings on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Now, I hope you enjoy this episode. What's up, Slick Talkers? Welcome back. And this is our first ever Operators Roundtable, at least in 2024. And I can't wait to do more of these. They're so much fun. I love the format. And I had a fun time prepping for this one. We had Robin Cragen from Moving Mountains, Megan Moylan from the Outpost Group, Dennis from Cassiola, and of course, my friend and co host on Good Morning Hospitality, Brandy Canali with Romy. Now, you may have heard yesterday on the podcast feed that we are dropping a new original called Workflows and Espressos. So, one shameless plug to check that out. Megan Moylan on this panel or roundtable is the host, and we're so excited for what she's doing with this podcast. But before we give away the farm, basically, this whole roundtable is focused on operating at scale and properly operating at scale. What does that look like? How do brands and companies in our industry look at that? And now we're going to be doing a lot more roundtables in the future. So if you're interested in being in one of them, hit us up. Let Kelsey, our producer, know. If you have not heard of Kelsey, check out the show notes, emails in the description, and go check out some of our old episodes where we do a highlight episode on all the episodes that go out every month. So how many times can you say episode? All right, without further ado, get ready for our first operator roundtable in 3, 2, 1. You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. All right, everybody. Welcome to our first Operators Roundtable of 2024. I'm your host and moderator, Will Slickers, founder of Hospitality.fm. And I'm so excited because we exclusively picked 4 amazing operators in the industry with different property types, different business models, and of course, different geographic locations to make it, a little less competitive, to say the least. I'm really excited to introduce our first panelist. She is not only executive director of the Outpost Group out in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, but she's also a new time podcast host with her first official podcast. Maybe second one will come in the future, but first official podcast with us at Hospitality FM, launching January 23rd, called Workflows and Espressos. So welcome, Megan Moylan, to the first panel intro. Great to see you, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. You really dropped the bomb too. You said it.
I said it. Yeah, we're doing it. We're
It's
announcing the
happening.
pod as Kelsey and I are going through your episodes. We're getting excited. Got to get that
I'm super excited.
anticipation.
I can't wait.
I know it's gonna be good. I'm pumped. Also, great partners with that pod, so we'll share more next week. But to introduce our next amazing panelist, we have the one and only Mr. Magenta, always in the pink shirts, or the not pink, but magenta shirts at conferences. You can't miss him a mile away. We have the founder of Cassiola Vacation Homes, Dennis. So great to see you, my friend. How are you doing all the way in Orlando?
Good. Living the life.
I can't imagine that you're having a hard day with the beautiful sunshine weather that you guys have.
It's a little bit cloudy, but you just snowed me the outside of your cabin, and we don't have 3 feet of snow, so I guess that's a win, right?
Yes, very much a win, 100%. To introduce our next panelist, I have to say She did say this line first, but she is my tied for first co-host, favorite co-host I get to work with every Monday. She is not only that, but she has just been an amazing operator. She leads the way when it comes to urban operations. And of course, she's probably asked to be on every single panel at every conference and every podcast there is in the industry. The one and only Brandy Canali. Welcome to, of course, the first roundtable of the year. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm fantastic. That was such a glowing opening. Thank you so much.
Of
And
course. It's
you are my tied for first favorite co-host.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. Well, happy Friday, not happy Monday, but so good to have you on. Thank you for joining. And of course, I can't forget the moment making, mountain moving man, myth, and legend, Robin Cragen, all the way out here in Colorado, which he's actually not in Colorado today. He is in Phoenix, Arizona. So don't let the background fool you. Robin, how you doing?
Good to see you, Will. Good to see everybody else. Lovely to see my friends from the industry gathered around the table here.
Yes, I'm so excited. This group is super special to me. Not only have you guys been guests on my podcast, or you're co-host of a podcast with me, or you're doing a podcast in the network. I've had you guys all on multiple times, and it's just really special to get you guys together, hear your insights. And the title of this webinar or roundtable, I won't even call it a webinar. I hate that word technically, but I will say it's all about properly operating at scale. So I use the word properly as an intentional word because I think there has been maybe some things that happened in 2023 and early this year that people think they're operating at scale, but technically they're really failing at scale. And so I would love to open up the year, or kind of the topic is the reflections of 2023. And Robin, since I introduced you last, I want to start with you first and kind of go, what are you thinking about when it came to 2023 for moving mountains as a whole, but also our industry? Do you have any reflections that really stood out as you have been able to take time and reflect back?
Thanks, Will. Yeah, we have so many different things going on in our business that I think it's important for any operator kind of to narrow that down into, what are the big things to work on. For us, it's been, I'd say, a year where we've been looking for those incremental gains. We definitely listen to the people out there saying that we're looking at some headwinds potentially. Time to sharpen the pencil, time to make sure we're looking at our budgets. So we've been paying really close attention to every expense, every line item in the budget, making sure that expenses match what's expected. And it's the less than sexy piece of this business, is that we are running a business. It's about experiences and fun and all the rest of it, but it's important that we stay on top of the financials. So that was a huge focus for us in moving mountains. We've gone through a lot of growth in the last 3 to 4 years, and I think that is the great challenge, is when you have that many more moving parts, you've got that many more expenses to keep an eye on. And our philosophy has really been driven around the idea that if we could find a 1% gain in every corner of our business, that cumulatively that adds up to something, and that really has played out for us. So I'm very pleased with the work we did in this area. We spent a lot of time looking at spreadsheets. Not so exciting, but the results matter because it means that we can continue pushing on as we are.
I love that. And I couldn't agree more with the financial discipline side. It's a message I'm going to be preaching a lot this year and probably a lot on this roundtable. So we'll come back into other aspects of your business, moving beaches, moving oceans, as you announced with us, I think sometime, Christmas last year, almost a year ago. And so now, Megan, I'm very curious for you. It's, been very interesting to hear you say on other panels or roundtables that, I think Outpost had a really good year compared to what a lot of other operators may have felt in 2023. What reflections have you guys had when it came to the overall year for you?
Yeah, it was crazy. So while most people were still experiencing this like insane high in 2022, our bubble totally popped and we started to normalize in 2023 and actually had the best year that we've ever had. And our inventory was doubling year over year until about 2021, where we started to make smaller increases in our net gain year over year. But 2023 was actually great after a very, very scary year. We took a lot of the same precautions that you did, Robin, and focused a lot on expenses. So we shaved as much as we possibly could off of unnecessary expenses. We cut down on sending massive teams to conferences, and which, that can add up and cost $50,000 in a single calendar year. So we spent a lot of time making sure that we were focusing on the revenue management side of things and ensuring that we were optimizing everything, every open date at every open property that we possibly could, and communicated proactively with our homeowners in a way that we hadn't before. And then cut out a lot of unnecessary stuff. And I think it was hard on the G&A side of things, like specifically with our people, money that we were spending years prior, right, when we were swimming in it from COVID. We saw this like scary possibility in 2022 that could not be the case. And I think it was a way for us to really understand, like, okay, how are we sustainably going to be moving forward when we don't have the supply in Jackson to double year over year in inventory anymore? Like, there is an end in sight for how much we can grow in this market. So we have to focus on what we can do to optimize what we have. But I'm hopeful that 2024 is going to be similar to what we experienced in 2023. And it'll be a banner year.
All right. Sorry to interrupt the pod. And I know this is a really good roundtable discussion already. You're welcome. I loved prepping this whole thing. But we have to give a shout out to our partners at Hostfully and Hudson Creative Studios. So Hostfully, really quickly, if you don't know this, they're a property management platform, right? And property management platforms are the core of your business. Later on in this whole roundtable, we're going to discuss tech stacks and what that looks like and kind of tech wins. But for me, Hostfully has been such a great tool. We've used them ever since we launched recreation rentals back in 2021. And now we are at 20 properties, and Hostfully has been the heart of our operations and our business in the sense of handling reservations, managing calendars, doing guest messaging and automated triggers, plus syncing the rest of our tech stack together. Now, I'm a big fan of creating a brand and allowing my guests to book directly. That's why we partnered with Hudson Creative Studios, which has built our Book Direct site and also has built their own booking engine in order to allow your guests to book directly. Now, the best thing about this is that they're perfectly integrated with Hostfully. Now, we only went with them because of that. And because, the founder, Ellie, he's awesome. He's going to be on the podcast here soon. And we just really, truly believed in the product. Now, it's really smooth. It's really seamless. And if you check out our website, I think you'll like it just as much as we do, where it's seamless and we feel like the guest is also going to have a good experience without it being clunky and really breakable, if that makes sense. So without further ado, check out the links in the show notes. Make sure you grab our partnership offers. If you want $100 off, 3 months off your guidebooks, plus a sweet discount at Hudson Creative Studio, then go ahead and check them out. Link in the show notes. Great friends of the pod. Show them some love. And now, of course, back to the roundtable. I love that. Well, there's more to come to on what you just said, but I want to kind of pivot to Dennis really quick. We know that, at least I know that for all the listeners and people watching the recap and all this other stuff, Cassiola is not just Cassiola Vacation Homes. You guys have ventured out into your guest store company, which is acquiring the homes and investing and running them under the Cassiola brand. You also have franchises. Now, it's never a good sign when a business in our industry goes out of business in general. It's always kind of a rocky experience. And so we saw this company called Here, which is similar to Getor, go out of business in 2024, first week of the year. How do you guys see things playing out within the overall, not just management arm, but your investing arm as well?
Yeah. To be honest, I was not really surprised with the news. I mean, I didn't see it coming, or I didn't have any inside information, but just based on the projections that I saw when you could sign up to invest in those properties, I just knew that they were never going to be able to get those returns. I looked at their DNA numbers. We know that those numbers are not always reality, and that they include a lot of the fees. So we have been very, very careful with investing, especially in the last year or so. Interest rates are high. Property values are very high, so you have to be very, very careful, because one wrong deal can really bring the returns of the whole portfolio down. Now, you see a couple of other players that are very successful in this field. They're really building one-of-a-kind experiences, while the portfolio from here was more like what other Airbnbs look like, or other short-term rentals. So I think if you want to do it successful, you really need to stand out and bring it to the next level, or find those hidden gems, those deals that really work out.
No, that makes sense. And I do want to make a comment for any of the live viewers. I can see that we have quite a few of you on. If you have comments, put them into the sidebar chat. Kelsey, who is running things behind the scenes, shout out to Kelsey on the team, making it really easy for me to run and have actual conversation with you guys. She will make sure that we get to you guys at the end. So please put anything in there. And Dennis, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to come back to you guys around that conversation as well, as it's a very interesting topic. But to get to my tied for first favorite co-host, Brandy, I am very curious. You know, we have mentioned many times on Good Morning Hospitality, in our conversations one-on-one, in group settings, the retreat in New York, for example, P&L's super important, as Robin and everyone else has already mentioned. Where did that kind of, I guess, reflection moment come into you and Romy and the team over there when looking back at 2023?
Yeah, we had the realization, kind of like a little late, last year, that that the landscape was changing from a revenue perspective. And it's easy to overlook your expenses when money is flowing in. And so we hadn't been as diligent, frankly, with monitoring the P&L and having these regular, P&L meetings and really scrutinizing every cost. So once we realized that really needed our attention in 2023, much like everybody else on this call, we really drilled down. And something our finance team has been doing a really great job of is really turning the P&L into a visual presentation. And we're working on automating that so that we can see the P&L broken down different ways, by building, by market, months, like all these different things that we can toggle on and off to see if there are anomalies, things we might be missing if we're just looking at a giant Excel sheet or going through NetSuite. So and also having different people from different parts of the company look things over, because we might not be aware of what's happening in a specific, in the maintenance department in New Orleans. We might think that bill looks fine, but they might call to our attention that that's not what it should be. So really having a lot of different people take a look at our P&L and our financials. And that is something that's something we're going to maintain even in good times, because I think you get lulled into this false sense of confidence when things are going really well, and you get caught a little bit when things start to, 2022 was just like this high. So I think now we have our kind of all of our stuff dialed in a bit more, and we're going to continue that through 2024.
I love that. And so this one is more targeted towards Dennis and Robin, but I also want to include everybody in this. So I want to get your take, Dennis, Robin. I feel like your brands, you guys get to be a little bit more picky on the homes that you take into your program and that you put under your management. Robin, many times when I was with you on our tours of Steamboat Springs, you would say, yes, this house was with us, but at the end of the day, it didn't meet our standards when it came to X, Y, and Z. And I was shocked, because on the outside, I'm like, holy crap, this house is beautiful. I would kill to manage this home. And Dennis, you same thing. You've shown many times to me when I point out certain properties in Florida, whether it's in Miami, Orlando, you pick out certain things that I feel like you could just say are a little bit higher of a standard than most Airbnb hosts or people that are just getting into short-term rentals. So when it comes to 2024, Brandy just said, 2022 was kind of this high. I feel like everyone was just growing, cash was flowing, people were traveling, demand was way higher than supply. It shifted. Do you guys feel like in 2024 you still get to be as picky, or do you think that everyone's going to be really kind of opening up the doors to newer ideas of lower standard, or maybe not even lower standard, but just different type of homes and tiers within their management program?
I think it's going to get even more important now to pick the right homes, because it's especially that lower segment that's going to suffer. If there's less demand, people are not going to pick the ugly homes, right? So I think this will become more important than ever, not just the home, but also for our markets, then the amenities, the location in downtown Miami. Those are the kind of things, if you have a good home with good amenities in a great location, those will still rent. But it's that yeah, below that average standard types of homes that are gonna have a really hard time. And a lot of them I predict are gonna leave short-term rentals, which would be good, because there's an oversupply in this market. So it will balance itself out a little bit more.
What about you, Robin?
Yeah.
How do you feel from the mountaintop?
Um, I would agree, Dennis. I mean, I think this is a conversation about quality over quantity, and there's a lot more conversation in our industry today about you hear about people the realization that if you thin your portfolio, um, it isn't necessarily having more homes that's going to make you more money. When the owner is not fully in alignment with you and your values and your goals, then you can often find yourself in conflict with that owner. That becomes a huge time suck. Time is money. So I think when you're not pulling in the same direction, then realizing that you're going to be better off without them, that's kind of a moment of growth for a property manager. You hear many people talking about the early stages of life of their company. We've all been there. We've taken homes that we wish we hadn't. And the reason we took the home is because we've got a maintenance guy to keep busy. We've got housekeepers to keep busy. And we think that might be what our guests are looking for. I could tell you it didn't come easy to us to realize this. I think we've learned it in some cases the hard way over the last 25 years. But definitely, I'm always impressed when I'm hearing other managers talking about we shrunk our portfolio intentionally by 10% last year, and we're making 20% more money out of it because we're providing our guests with what they need. Our staff are spending less time putting out fires with the owner. We kind of feel like we have a portfolio that's more aligned with our brand. And, it's a conversation about your brand and what you want to be in the marketplace. And I think more as you hear people talking about the idea that brands have been missing and that there's an opportunity to create a brand presence in a marketplace, you realize that this is a discipline that you have to stick to. You kind of have to make sure that people know who you want to be in the marketplace.
What piece of advice would you give maybe a newer operator who's got a little bit of experience under their belt, but is trying to look at the Casiolas, the Romies, the Outposts, the Moving Mountains as an example to scale towards? Do you have any piece of advice when it comes to saying no to every home that comes your way?
Well, I think it's about defining your brand. I think your brand, a lot of people might think that having a brand is about having a nice logo or wearing a nice pink shirt, as Dennis is modeling for us today. But there's a lot more to what Dennis does than just his logo and his colors. That makes him identifiable in the marketplace. But behind that, I know from having talked to him that they have really defined and teased out and structured what their brand is. Every standard, because they've gone through the franchising process, they've really had to take that to the next level. But making sure that internally and then externally, that you can say, these are our standards. This is who we are. This is how we do things. That is where you need to be. And in the beginning, you don't realize the value of that. But if you did that early on, I think if we had done more of that early on, it would have saved us a lot of heartache, because it becomes the foundation from which you build your company.
I agree
love
with
that.
that. It's more about the experience. Every one of our homes is unique. So a lot of people think about standards, that things have to be exactly the same, like what you have in hotels. But that's the opposite of what we stand for, right? We want to go for that authentic, unique experience. But the experience itself, from the entry, the communication up front, to what you find in the house, what you need to bring yourself, where to go for questions, that should be as streamlined and standardized as possible. And a good example is we were just talking. We just got back from IMN, and I was a little bit late to book our hotel rooms, so I wanted to book like 3 days before the conference at the conference hotel. It was $10,000 for 2 nights per person. So for 3 of us, that would have been $30,000. So I thought, no way. So I went on Booking.com and I found a great deal, $600 for a 3-bedroom apartment, 5 minutes away. And we got there, and it was just an eye-opening experience. First of all, it was like a maze to park your cart and get to the entrance. And it's something that you don't think about anymore, because once you know where to go, you get so used to it that you don't see the struggles of your guests anymore. But it took us 15-20 minutes just to find out how to get into the parking garage, where to park our car, how to get everything back into the building. There was like a little key fob that we needed to use to open the door, but no one explained it to us. We didn't know that it was a key fob to start with. It just looked like a label on the remote for the garage. So it's those kind of things that are important. The whole guest experience, the branding in the home, the signage, the arrival communication, how can they reach out to you during their stay. That is what we try to standardize, and that should be the same in every Casiola home that you stay at, whether it's in Orlando or Aruba. The home itself, the environment is going to be completely different, but what you find in the home and how it works, that should be the same wherever you go.
I love that. Brandy and Megan, I'm curious, Megan, you're in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I think you guys more focused towards homes and condos, and Brandy, obviously the multifamily building structure from Miami to New Orleans. Where do you guys see that kind of conversation leaning towards in your markets and in your operations when it comes to growth and inventory count, but also maintaining that higher level of quality from being, like, as Robin and Dennis has said, being a little bit more picky on who you allow in and how do you standardize that?
So it's interesting. Most of my career has actually been in the Panhandle of Florida, career in vacation rentals. And there were, along the strip of 30A, which is where I was focused, there were about 15,000 vacation rentals at the time, right? And so my previous company, 360 Blue, we had this like very easy formula to understand our point of profitability and what was worth taking on and what wasn't worth taking on our program. And I can talk a little bit more about like what that formula looks like. But moving to Jackson, there are 850 professionally managed homes in the entire town and surrounding area of Jackson, because so much of the land is protected through the National Park Service. And just like owners that have 1,000-acre farms, right? Or Harrison Ford, who has a lot of land here. So much of it is protected, and there really is this like finite amount of land to build. So the supply is so much smaller, which has allowed us to reach this point of profitability where if we bring on a 2-bedroom condo versus a 7-bedroom home, like of course the 7-bedroom home is making more money, but it makes sense for us to take on any inventory that we can get to have this like growth in Jackson. And it's so like the market is so concentrated that it's easy to get from place to place, right? And that can impact you depending on how spread out your properties are. If you're traveling like on 30A, we would travel from one end to the other. Plus we had some homes in Panama City Beach. Yes, of course. So this question said, can I go over the point of profitability? Oh, wow. That's a cool feature. I like this. Okay. So we had this massive spreadsheet and it had every single property on it, what our projected income for that property was in a given year and what our commission rate was. So we knew initially what we were going to be taking home. And then how much do we pay housekeepers annually to take care of this property? And how much are we bringing in from a housekeeping income point of view? How much time does the owner take? And so we would use our owner relations team who would go through their properties. They were assigned specific properties or are assigned specific properties so they could really speak to their relationship with the owner. Like, this owner takes 30% of my time. Okay, well, if that owner relations person makes X dollars and it's 30% of their time, it allowed us to assign this like value that our team was spending on it. Then we set a specific value for like finance and marketing. And of course that varies per property. But it was just helpful for us to understand, like, okay, on average, we spend $10,000 of staff time plus this $30,000 of our owner relations team members' time. And here's how much money we're actually making off of the property. And it allowed us to say, like, okay, well, unless we take on a home that is going to bring us in $80,000 of income, it is not worth it. Or $60,000 of income, right? Like that, it really determines, like, or depends on your business model to figure out what that point of profitability is. And the formula isn't 100% foolproof, right? But it gives you this general idea of what to expect and where, like, okay, if I bring on an owner that isn't going to bring in X amount of income, like we're going to lose money on it. And so unless it's a strategic play and this owner has multiple friends that we need to get on the program, or they are building 5 other properties, like it's probably not worth your time.
I love that. So a little bit of a formulated pickiness where you get to actually plug and play and see how it will kind of fit into the overall model. I love that.
Exactly.
All right, Brandy, how do you see it?
So I definitely, when Robin was saying in the beginning, like you just kind of take whatever you can get, I definitely relate to that, especially when we were starting off and we were pivoting from the single family homes to trying to get into multifamily, like full buildings. It's very difficult when you have no track record. So you kind of have to take what you can get in that respect. And in South Florida, there's a ton of supply, but a lot of that supply is in huge condos, and you're not taking over, a 1,000-unit condo building. So it's been interesting trying to find that supply in South Florida. And then the quality of that definitely really varies. And that can be difficult because there's some problem children in our portfolio where they're just, they're older buildings and there's a lot of maintenance issues that come with that. So the Florida weather is not kind to these buildings. So you have to factor that in as well. Whereas conversely, in New Orleans, there's just incredible, like so many beautifully renovated warehouses and big buildings like that we'll take them all, like beautifully, beautifully restored. There's like comparatively very few maintenance issues. And we will, there have been very few deals that we've passed up that we've been presented there. It's kind of like knowing your market and knowing what the quality of that construction is like. Also with owners, there are definitely some owners where you are like, wow, like some owners that take up just a wildly disproportionate amount of our time. So that's something that some of these deals we've had for many years. And in the beginning, you can't be as picky because you just have to get some sort of record. And now we're definitely, there's we don't have quite the formula that Megan had, but there's definitely a lot more vetting that goes into it. And we, from experience, our contracts become more precise and detailed based off of all these experiences that we have. So, from knowing which costs, like maybe the owner has to cover those costs, but do they have to hire the contractor? Like all these like little details that when you're coming up with these contracts, when you're just starting out, you think you have your bases covered, and you learn that you don't. But going forward into 2024, I think our vision is just, making sure the product is the right product and that it's not going to be a detractor from a time perspective as well, because it's not just about the revenue. There's a lot of other considerations. So being picky, but being open to maybe opportunities that we wouldn't have necessarily looked at before.
That's very good. And you both have mentioned some certain things, and I think this is a great conversation to segue into. Wasn't fully preparing for this, but I think Robin, for you specifically, I know ever since Dharm and the book Unreasonable Hospitality has been such a big thing for you and me, and I think everyone on this call. But also, we're talking about scale, and we're talking about being picky and formulas and all these things that kind of add up into growth. And when you have growth, sometimes hospitality is missed. Do you think there is a proper way to scale and grow and run a business with good P&L, good profitability, and good reviews and owner retention and all these other things, but also maintain a level where you can execute hospitality within your business? Or do you think once you get to a certain point, that has to kind of shift one or the other? And I'll leave this open to anybody.
Well, I love that question because it's the question that I asked to Will Gadara when he was speaking at Durham. We had this fantastic Q&A at the end of his keynote address. And really, you can tell that this author, it runs through his blood, the way that a few of us in the industry have been talking about hospitality over the years. So the question is, as you scale, it has been demonstrated that the larger companies tend to have lower Google review scores, that the cracks seem to appear a little bit more in these companies than in the smaller operators, where we can kind of keep our finger on the pulse. And his answer was, we continue to grow our business beyond 11th Madison Park. By the time they sold their business, and by the time they sold their restaurant group, they had some 10 restaurants with, I think, over 1,000 employees serving, as he said, tens of thousands of meals every week, every month. And it comes from having a commitment to concepts like unreasonable hospitality. So, our company is called Moving Mountains for a reason. From the very beginning, we've always talked about the idea that we would move a mountain for our guests. For me, just hearing unreasonable hospitality is a way of kind of throwing fuel on the fire for us. It's going to be a theme in our company. It's a fresh way to look at what we do. And I think it's also inspiration to take it to the next level, because I think this idea of doing something completely unreasonable, and the fact that that can actually, even though it might involve spending more time, even might involve spending more money, what he has demonstrated is the value in terms of the impact that you create, the way that you make people feel about your business is actually more meaningful to the long-term success of your company. It doesn't mean that you can go out there and give free lodging, but I think it also demonstrates that that's really not what's required. What's required, and what they demonstrate so well in the book, is how well they listened to their clients and what their clients were looking for, and how they were waiting for moments where they could make a difference. And it's something we talk about as we have a large team, especially seasonally in the winter, with shuttle drivers and additional staff to support in the field, is the people that are on the front line who are in front of our guests need to know that they are empowered to listen and then act to make a difference to the guest.
I
Totally
think
agree.
for us, a big example has always been Disney. We're in the mouse's backyard. And I think Disney proves that a company, just Disney World alone, employs directly more than 80,000 people here in Orlando, and worldwide, a lot more. And they show that they can take this to the next level, that they can have that in reasonable hospitality at scale. Doesn't matter if it's theme parks or cruise lines, they are just way ahead of the competition. And it's just in their DNA. I did a couple of courses from the Disney Institute. Anyone can join them. So they have a separate division where they train business leaders. Everyone that starts at Disney also has to go through their courses. And it's just amazing. They have a blueprint of having this unreasonable hospitality at scale. And I'm not going to say that it's easy, but if you follow those steps, you're going to get pretty close. I think it's amazing. I can highly recommend anyone to go there, look at the website Disney Institute, and see when their next course or summit is.
Definitely. Yeah, the what they call it, the Imagineers is what they're called. The people that make
Engineering is their department that creates new attractions, so they're part of it. But every frontline worker goes through the same course, and it's called Disney Traditions. It's a few days, and they just learn you how to deliver that exceptional guest service, and they empower their people to do that. Every single person that works in the park, they know what they can do if they see a kid running and they drop their popcorn. They know that they have the empowerment to get them a new popcorn for free, or give them a balloon or a shirt or a stuffed animal. So they really empower their people to create those magical moments for the guests.
I love that. I miss those days of hotel management where I could do the same, but running a remote company is a little different. I'm curious, Brandy, you mentioned the word product specifically on the last kind of topic and shift that we had. And so I want to know, do you guys look at unreasonable hospitality and the product that you offer and the service that you offer as in a way that is actually reasonable? And it's hard to ask that question because, unreasonable hospitality is supposed to be unreasonable, but in the product of vacation rentals and short-term rental management, I find it's, such a different beast, even though hotels still have the same type of struggles every now and then. They have investors and owners and groups kind of behind the actual real estate. So I'm very curious, where is that fine line balance between product and unreasonable hospitality?
Yeah, it's I was so bummed to have missed ARM because I absolutely love that book. And when I was reading it, I thought like there's so many things that I would love to implement, but I also like there are some realities of running this business. Like we run with a very, very lean team. So I think for us, the focus is making sure that we're delivering like a well-maintained, clean product, making sure that if we are having any operational issues that we're attacking them, and then also training our frontline staff, like our housekeepers and our maintenance techs, who are really the ones that are probably interacting with the guests the most, like on property, like some guest experience training so that they know how to properly agree or interact with a guest or help a guest with something, because those are the touch points that they're going to have during the stay. I would love to have uh, the bandwidth and the money to do some really fun things. And, we encourage our team members, if they overhear something like it's an anniversary or a birthday, and they want to buy like a bottle of champagne or flowers or something like that, there is room to do that. But I think that there have been some realities of the last year, and I think the coming year, of making sure that we have our house in order and making sure that we're providing a great service for the guest. And then, we can work on having all these extra things on top of that. Our product is much different than Robin's, and it's a different clientele, it's a different expectation. And I also think like when I was reading Unreasonable Hospitality, you had like a 200-person staff for one restaurant. So you have a overwhelmingly large staff for what the operation is. And when you have more bodies, they had those dream weavers, people whose sole responsibilities were, creating these incredible, like blow your mind moments. And so I think you have to kind of work within the boundaries that you have, and finding these options of, like what can I do that's not expensive? Like it doesn't, can't give away free stays all the time. But I think focusing on providing the product the customer paid for, and then training rather your staff how to act with them, the people that are actually going to be interacting with them during their stay. And then they love that. People get shout outs all the time in their reviews because they had a positive, impactful interaction with that guest during their stay.
I think
Awesome.
it's really or needs to be part of the culture, and you have to set an example. We do a lot of stuff with our team members, as some of you may have seen on LinkedIn and other channels, and the reason why we do is just to set an example and to show them that you can do a lot of fun stuff without a big budget. One of my favorite weeks is actually coming up in February around Valentine's Day. We have Love Week. And every year, it's like a secret angel game. So everyone gets a special person, and they have to surprise them every single day of that week. In the beginning, we didn't have a budget limit, but we had to implement a budget limit. So it's now $15 a day. So it's a very, very low amount. But the goal is that you surprise them, that you send them a nice message, that you maybe give them a day off and take over their shift. Just be creative as possible to make them feel like really appreciated and loved. And do that with a very small budget. And if you do that internally, people are also going to apply that to the guest and the owner. So it's really part of the culture. And I know if you read the book or you do one of his presentations, it seems like, oh my God, they have so much stuff. It's so high end. They have huge budgets to do that or deliver that hospitality. But you have to be creative and train your team to be creative. Assisting a guest by just carrying their luggage from the car into the home, there's so much. It doesn't cost a thing. It's maybe 2 minutes of your time. But if you're inspecting a home and you see the guest arriving, just help them getting in. Make sure that they have the right door code to open the door. Those little things go a long way, and that's what people remember, and that's what we call the extraordinary hospitality.
I was gonna say I got to
Yeah.
experience one of your amazing parties, your Halloween one. So, shout out to all of your team that Really, you guys really do have a good time. It's a lot of fun to watch. Sorry, Robin, go ahead.
I just want to add, I mean, what Dennis just said there is really key. Is this does not necessarily have to come with a huge budget. And I think what you do for your guests as a standard, I don't think that anyone is suggesting that you would have to change that and suddenly become focused on delivering services at different levels. What Will goes on to highlight in his book is about the model that they use is that 95-5. So they take 5% of their profits and invest that back into unreasonable hospitality. So it's very much about having a budget, because that gives you a comfort level to spend when you need to spend, and then empowering your staff to look for the opportunity to spend that money, and maybe to occasionally do that in a completely unreasonable way. There's many different approaches to this, but I think if you have that mindset of sometimes it's as much as spending an extra 5 to 10 minutes, which essentially doesn't really cost you anything as a business. You're already paying for those staff. As Dennis said, taking the extra time for helping a guest who's really struggling with getting into the residence, that can make all the difference. Instead of just texting back to the guests, you need to look up this in an app. I think we've become so tech focused at times that we forget that not everybody, especially someone another 10, 20 years on from our age group, not everyone's used to and excited about having another app on their phone. Maybe they don't even have a smartphone. And it is important for us to realize that it's the power of personal connection that can often deliver that value at no real cost to the business. But it's just helping people in your team, empowering them to understand that you really got to look for these opportunities.
Yeah,
I feel
and
like we have a Will Gadara fan club right now. I would
yeah.
like to be the president. Although Robin should probably be the president. I'm obsessed with him. Like, the book is incredible.
I was just gonna say, and there's a certain couple round of topics and questions I wanted to get to, but this is such a important topic that I think we all have on top of mind, especially through LinkedIn and all of our inner circles that we run with. But Robin, I kind of wanted to point something to you, and knowing that your expansion out of just vacation homes, going into what you guys are building with moving oceans and moving beaches, safety. And I think there's obviously, when we come to the topic of product and the way that we are getting to be a little bit pickier with our product and the way that you get to kind of avoid those downfalls of just accepting any home. How do you guys look at safety when it comes to expanding into this vertical? Especially, this is a little bit more luxury, this is a little bit more higher spend type of I hate calling them a customer, but type of guest and customer, client, whatever word you want to use. How do you guys look at that from an overall business perspective?
Oh, I think safety is another one of those non-negotiables. I mean, we're extremely fortunate to have people like Justin Ford, and there's a couple of others out there that are really helping to bring safety as a topic to the front. I think we're beginning to see it as a day one topic at some of the larger conferences, and people's attention is up just because of the amount of awareness that people like Justin have brought to this. When you see stories about people dying in vacation homes, but I instantly go, as an owner, I never want to be in that situation that might happen as a result of us failing to do something that is really non-negotiable, failing to ensure that smoke detectors are in, they can actually, they can expire. So they have to be within their date of use. They should be tested regularly. They should be connected. They should, Justin is brand specific. So there are some that don't output enough noise. I think, these are the basic bare bones that become non-negotiable in our business, because at the end of the day, the guests are trusting us not only with their vacation plans, but you can argue that they're even trusting us with their lives. And, we never want to be in a situation where, as an industry, that becomes a challenge. I mean, it is a challenge out there, because there are people that are paying very, very little attention to safety right now. And we've been lucky to this point that, it's not an everyday occurrence that a vacation home catches fire. But my hope is, through the kind of work that we're doing, training our staff to, going through the Breezeway safety training course, is that we can ensure that never happens in one of our homes. and God forbid that something like that should happen, that it never results in an injury or loss of life. I truly think that that's fundamental, and more people are showing up to these seminars because they're all beginning to realize the same thing.
Yeah, and his safety week was a big week for us on our vacation rental micro school. So lots of replays and listens on that. And every time I hear Justin talk about it, my mind gets blown away, and I immediately go to my business partner and text him a whole list of things that we need to go double check. So I totally agree. Dennis, I'm very curious for you going into kind of safety, but also social responsibility. You are a big fan of this. You've talked about it before. Before we start getting to the kind of closure of this roundtable, would love any open thoughts that you have to share with the live viewers.
Sure, that's actually our big theme for 2024. So social responsibility, or what they call business for good. So we are, of course, in business to make money, but we also want to do good for the community around us, be the best neighbor we can be good for our employees, and be good for the environment and the planet. And it was actually really an eye-opener. A few months ago, I was invited by Booking.com to their headquarters in Europe, and they're so far ahead of us on the field of sustainability. They have all those campaigns going on. They have vegan meals available. It's just amazing. And it's not just in Europe, but also in other parts of the world that this becomes so much more important. And as we do have a lot of international travelers, I think that's going to be a big theme for the next few years. So we want to be prepared for that. We have the ambition to become a B Corp in the next year. And get a couple of other quality labels too. So I think that's a trend that you're going to see in our field in the next few years for sure.
I love that. This is going to be a new question, a new conversation for me. So I want to actually start with Megan. I'm going to give you the hard ball.
Okay.
This is this is something I'm just very curious. It doesn't have to be, and this is for everybody on the panel, or not panel, roundtable. It doesn't have to be a tech that you use today. It could be a tech you've heard of. I know we all get pitched to do demos and to look at this software and to check out this app and to do this and to do that. So don't pretend like you don't, because I know we all do. And I'm probably guilty of introducing a couple people to you all. So sorry about that in the future. But I'm very curious, what tech vendor or software do you think is winning, or what won last year? What tech vendor do you think won 2023 for you, whether it's in your operations or outside of it?
Okay. I feel like I have 3 answers. 4. Man, this is hard. Okay. So tied for first, I would say, or maybe just first. Yeah. Okay. Breezeway. Breezeway is number 1. And I think that, not I think, in at every show that I went to this year, Breezeway was a standout in terms of just like raving fans, which when we were talking about unreasonable hospitality, I go back to Jeremy Sprinkle, who along with his brother started 360 back in the day, and he always talked about raving fans, like creating raving fans of your employees who will then create this incredible experience for your customers. And I am like a raving Breezeway fan. I've used it for a really, really long time, 6-7 years probably, and I think they do a great job on the customer service side. And then just like across the industry, it feels like everybody has a gripe about every single vendor. Sorry, it just is kind of what it is, right? And I feel like Breezeway is the one that I haven't heard a whole lot of gripes about this year.
All right.
Jason's going to kill me.
Anybody
I
else?
agree with
Anybody?
you. We don't use Breezeway, so I don't have direct experience with it, but it really stands out how many fans they have. Any conference, even at the track user conference, everybody agreed that Breezeway is the greatest thing that they're using. So yeah, they must be doing something right.
Yeah, I'm one of those fans. I have to agree.
Team Breezeway. Robin?
I would,
Yeah,
I would say the same thing. It's the only software that when we changed our PMS, it's the only software I've ever had our staff actually evangelizing internally, because it was the only question that came when we changed our PMS was, please, dear God, tell me we're not going to change from Breezeway. But I would tell you that technology is definitely on our minds, and to shrink the tech stack. We're living in a world of death by 1,000 subscriptions right now. And, so we're going down the list, trying to evaluate where there's overlap. And there's too many buckets of data within our company right now. And that is maybe that's self-inflicted in that we went after best-in-class solutions to each of the technology, problems we were trying to solve. So we have a specific live chat. We have a specific texting platform. We have 3 CRMs within our company because the CRM that's in Track doesn't really meet our needs. We use Salesforce to warehouse all the guest information and run marketing and guest services. But because of how we do our emails currently, we have a campaign monitor account as well. So we are working on a data management consolidation strategy right now. I feel like that we need that single source of truth. We need to stop having to look over here to see what the guest said to us in chat, in live chat, in Zingle, in WhatsApp, in SMS, by email, by phone. Those need to be consolidated into one place because, as I've said many, many times, we're in the relationship business. And I mean, we're struggling to meet the needs of our guests who don't want to tell their story to us more than once. And yet they come and stay with us many, many times. And I mean, as much as we're succeeding in having long lasting relationships with guests, we are not giving our staff the tools they need in order to do that better. So that is probably top of my list in terms of 2024 things to solve. I hope that I can get to the end of this next year and tell you that we solved that issue because it's the biggest of many small holes in the ship that we need to plug.
Hopefully we'll be able to revisit all of this as a group together and see how you did, Robin. I'm very curious. Randy?
Call me when you figure it out.
Yeah, I was like, same. We're about trying to have like our.
I was going to say, we're working on this as a group with a few other property managers. I'd invite you to the conversation because there's a few of us trying to solve the problem together. And I feel like if we can find a solution that works for 2 or 3 of us, then, it could be a solution that works for many in the industry. Because I know that we're not alone in this challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we want to have like our sources of truth. And right now we have 2, which are Guesty, PMS, and NetSuite. But then there's all these there's like these little needs that pop up. And so it's definitely it's really challenging. We went through and just started just mercilessly cutting vendors last year if they weren't absolutely necessary. So yeah, we'll circle back on that. I'm very, very curious. But I think, and this is not a company that we use, but I think that they made a big splash last year with was Hostaway. I mean, just with such a massive funding round. And I don't really know anything about their inner workings, so I'm just curious to see what they do because I think there is this big PMS battle right now, and I do think you'll see some people kind of fall off or merge, all that. So curious to see if $175 million gets them anything.
Yeah, more to cover and follow on Good Morning Hospitality, right?
Exactly. Give us more content.
Amen. All right. Now we're talking about tech wins. And yes, of course, Breezeway is a great company. Shout out to Breezeway. But my big tech win, not just because they're a partner of the podcast, is Minute. Minute is in all of our homes. So no matter what, we're remote managers. I'm in Colorado. My business partner is in Vancouver, Canada. And we have properties all over the country from Britannia, Canada, Seattle to Florida, and many other locations. We need eyes and ears on our homes. And the reason why I love Minute and they were a big win for us is because they're privacy safe. They're not spying on your guests. And of course, they keep us up to date. They have a lot of technology built in. They have great integrations. They have a great integration with Hostfully, who's our PMS. So that's why we say Minute is our big tech win. Plus, the team is amazing. They're always constantly building. I see that the teams go on retreats and do engineer camps and do hacking things and try to better their skills as a company. So shout out to Minute and all that they do. They're my big tech win of 2023 and going into 2024. Check out the offer in the show notes. You can get 2 months free if you use our link for Slick Talk. Now back to the roundtable as we discuss a lot more around operating at scale. All right, so I have 2 more kind of questions, and then I want to get to these questions from live viewers. So outside of you guys at this roundtable, as you're all legends among legends, as I commented on Robin's LinkedIn post when he was promoting this, so thank you guys. But I'm curious, who do you think could be the next up and coming operator or brand in the industry that actually is properly operating at scale? Now, this can mean many different things, but just want to see, who do you guys see being the next generation of hospitality operators out there?
I really think I found talking with Ben Wolf from Onera at a conference earlier this year or last year, I guess, really fascinating, and like the business that he's built, and like really unique stays. They do like 70 or 75% of their bookings through Instagram, which I think is wild. And so it's not traditional. And I think it's, it's not traditional homes by any means. It's not a traditional way that like, most operators go. So I think it'll be just interesting to see how this year pans out for them.
For sure.
That's
I
a
agree
really
with
good
them.
question. Okay, so one of my great friends, Brian Harris, out of Gulf Shores, Alabama, has an awesome company that's growing, really focused on the luxury side. And he, every time we have like a standing call once a month, today actually, and he's just like, he gives so many incredible tidbits. And I would say he's tied with the All Days of Abode in Park City, but they're now in Sun Valley, Idaho, and they're also in Jackson. They're
Mm.
great and really like have this incredible operation. I'm staying with them next month in Park City. So tied both of those.
I love it. Dennis or Robin, do you guys see any up and coming new players?
I think one of
I'm
them is in the room with us today. I mean, I think Dennis is onto something with his franchise model, and I think there is 2 or 3 of those out there. Casago being another. That the rate of growth is maybe not much talked about. I don't know that Dennis has hit the full throttle yet, but I know that he's laying the foundation for that right now. But a properly implemented franchise model looks to me to be maybe a way that people are going to scale more sustainably. It's one thing to go out and just buy companies where people are looking to get off the bus, and just to kind of pull those brands into kind of a pen. And whether you keep the local brand or whether you try to overlay a brand over that is one thing. But I think from a consumer point of view that we don't have really big brands. It's not really a presence yet. And I think a big brand that's focused on delivering an exceptional guest experience, maybe that has more of a chance. I think there's probably more of a chance from what I've seen from the outside that a guest might begin to identify with a Casiola or a Casago as that's a company I've stayed with in this location, that I'm going to seek out their homes in this location. I think, and the other one that I would say is just in general, people talk about there's riches and niches, and there's a lot of new niche operators showing the face. I don't know that any of them have, just by their nature, have plans to scale. But I think you'll see more niche operators appearing and establishing themselves and having their own following, and that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, that they can cater to the needs of that client who wants that, whether it's a treehouse in the woods or, surprising to me that people would want to go into the woods and completely disconnect for their entire stay, because I just don't think that that's the world that we live in right now. But apparently there are people feeling that. So a company that caters to that, there's a niche, and there's probably a client group in this country that's interested in that.
I'm really curious to see how companies that are completely vertically integrated are going to do in the next few years. An example is Techvester. So they buy the homes, they renovate them, they manage them, they do everything. How that's going to turn out? The homes look amazing. If they can really figure it out and scale it. I agree with Robin. You may have people that say, hey, I want to stay in one of those homes wherever I go, because I had such a great experience, but they control everything. So really, really interested to see where that's going to go.
Awesome. Great names, great mentions. So I love that. Mine is Bolt Farm Treehouse out in the Smoky Mountains. So shout out to Tori and Seth. I think you guys are killing it. But my last question for all of you, and this has nothing to do with short-term rentals. It can if you want it to, but I'm very curious. And I'm going to actually start with Brandy. What is one thing you've changed your mind on in the last 12 months?
Ooh, I think, I will make it about work. And it's just about adapting and like our kind of like what our requirements are. I think we always prided us on pivoting, but now we committed to a model, and I wanted that to be the only thing that we were focusing on. And I think now I'm learned to like just broaden my horizons on what like to do what's best for the business, what's best for our employees, and not be so stuck in like one mindset.
Yeah, I love that. Now I'm gonna pick Robin. What's one thing you've changed your mind on in the last 12 months?
Still thinking. You could ask somebody else.
How about Dennis? Let's go to Dennis.
So what I've been doing in the last month or 2 months, I really was stuck in meetings the whole day. I had 7, 8 meetings a day, almost 5 days a week. And I had a feeling that I didn't accomplish anything anymore. It was Friday before I knew it, and nothing of what I wanted to do was done, or I haven't really accomplished anything. So we made some changes internally. I have cleared my calendar. I still have a few meetings, of course, every week, but I really have time to work on the business, and I love it. That's the part I love. We've been diving into processes, making videos to scale our operations. So just working on what I love to do, and the operations side and the day to day. I'm outsourcing to other people that are maybe much better at it than I am. So yeah, love it so far.
That's a
Yeah,
good change.
bombing your calendar is like one of the best things you can do. Just like start
Mhm.
over and only do what's absolutely necessary.
Mhm.
I love that. Well, Megan, as a new time podcast host, with workflows and espressos coming up, we have a lot of content to, bring into your season. But I'm curious, what's one thing you've changed your mind on the last 12 months?
I'm so excited about workflows and espressos, and I haven't changed my mind on podcasts. I've been excited for that, but I'm thinking, okay, so I put a really high emphasis on transparency with the team, and like from a financial aspect to a strategy aspect, like it is one thing that I'm like kind of preachy about. But I feel like I've learned a hard lesson in the last year where in an effort to be transparent about the direction we're moving in, I've almost shared like too much prior to knowing the answers myself. And I think that's okay in some scenarios, but it's also not okay in others, right? In a scenario where it's going to lead to like 15 immediate questions or unnecessary anxiety for a team member or the team in general, I think it's been really, I don't know, eye opening for me to understand like when and when not to share information about like where we're going as a company or a new process that's in place or a new team dynamic that I'm working on. And yeah, I don't know. I think there's a way to be transparent, but also do so very intentionally.
That's a good one. I could probably learn from that. So good, good one there, Megan. Robin, all right, best for last.
Well, actually, so I got a hint from Dennis there because there was a lot of things swirling in my head. I think I've really come around on the idea about outsourcing and remote work, and that is has a lot to do with the fact that that is how Heather and I are working right now. So right now we're in Phoenix and operating our business that is in Colorado. But as you mentioned, we're diversifying into oceans and beaches, and that is allowing us as a business to have a footprint in other markets. So just by the very nature of those things, we have kind of taken a step back from the day-to-day running of the mountains business in order to be able to focus on the flagship part of our oceans project, which is that we're building a catamaran to go into charter as a kind of an extension of our vacation rental business. It's the business we came from. It's something we wanted to get back to for a while. So I think learning that practically for ourselves, and then also the fact that, my marketing director lives in Oregon now. She's lived in Costa Rica. She moved from Steamboat because they lost their lease, and had to move to 2 other locations. And then realizing that you can actually function that way. I mean, how we're meeting today is very much how we meet as a team. And many of our meetings, what I realized is many of our meetings, even when I was physically present in Steamboat, I could meet with somebody where I was upstairs in my office and they'd be downstairs in their office was actually more practical to meet with a group of people. We got used to working this way. My revenue manager lives out on the East Coast. And once you've kind of crossed that fence and you're into the idea that you can have, obviously you can't clean and maintain homes in a location neutral manner, but there are many jobs within our business. Our finance director is located in the Midwest, and it has opened our minds to the idea that there's a bigger talent pool when everybody doesn't have to live in Steamboat, Breckenridge, Vale, and Beaver Creek. That's strengthening our business. It's offering our employees more flexibility. I had one of my reservationists ask about moving to New York, and in the past I probably would have really struggled with that. But housing is an issue in our mountain towns, and we need to adapt where necessary. And that's part of the evolution of meeting the needs of the marketplace and realizing that we can work collaboratively in all different ways. But behind that, we've had to bring up to date our remote working policies and our, who covers the cost of getting to work or getting to an important meeting, that kind of stuff. So like everything, we've had to figure it out as we go. But we're definitely getting better at that. And that definitely is a corner that I think we turned in the last year.
I really love that. This is one of my favorite questions. That's why I was being a little weird before getting on the recording with all of you guys, because I was really curious what you guys were changing or changed your mind on the last 12 months. So before we wrap it up, yeah, I really personally had sat on that one for a while. We have one question I wanted to bring up because I have had the pleasure and joy of being in a car with Brandy and Andreas and a couple other people in the industry for over an hour and a half listening to a P&L call. So one of these questions is from Bentley, and he goes, how do you manage expense growth or expense control with growth, especially from a staffing point of view? And the reason why I'm starting with you, Brandy, before we wrap all of this up with everybody is because you and Andreas were talking about the unit economics when you add more units or add more buildings, but not adding more team and actually having the team stay the same and controlling that cost. I'm very curious. How do you guys, what advice would you give Bentley here?
Yeah, I think your employee ratios are really important and doing the work to figure out what those are. So you can basically just create your calculator of like, okay, we have X number of employees that can handle X number of units. And then once we cross that threshold, we need one more guest experience person or we need one more maintenance tech. And what we try to tell the team, the initial reaction is that we always want to hire more because obviously that makes everybody's job easier. But we're trying to say, okay, think about like if we have more room in payroll, that could actually go towards your salary and giving you a raise. So what is your actual workload that you can handle? And there's some positions that are easier to calculate, like in guest experience, for example. It's like how many messages, phone calls. You can start to see when the call volume or message volume gets too high and the communication score starts to go down. That might, okay, now it's time to add some more people and there's a threshold there. So I think definitely coming up with your own calculator for all your different departments and then using that to gauge. And for adding staff, it's different if you're adding a like 20 unit building versus like a 100 unit building. There will obviously be different staffing considerations, but I think developing your own calculator will help you kind of get a good handle on the staffing requirements.
100% agree there. Your property to people ratio, I think, is really important. And so if you want to sacrifice a little on service, for example, in 3 areas because you really, really want to keep your team super lean, then maybe you have a higher property to employee ratio, right? Or if you're like, hey, I want to focus solely on the guest experience. What unreasonable hospitality looks like to me is meeting every guest when they check in, or having somebody give a full tour of every single property, or having 3 maintenance techs assigned to one right? Like everybody's experience is a little bit different depending on what you consider to be like your goal for your business, and then you'd have a little more employees, right? But we do the exact same thing. Like, okay, as soon as we reach X number of new properties, or we have 15 homes in the pipeline and we just signed 5 more, like we're going to bring on 1 maintenance tech, and then the next time. But I also communicate the same thing to the team, Brandy. Like recently our marketing team, we've been having so much design work and we've been utilizing a contracted designer in addition to our creative director. And we had this conversation of like, okay, what does this look like? Do we need to bring on another contracted designer, or do we bring in another full-time employee? Well, what that means for you is it's going to ultimately cap out like what we're willing to spend on this department. Granted, like not one person can take on 100 hours worth of design work, but is it worth it to you? And allowing the department head to be a part of that decision. Like, okay, this will allow your salary to increase X%, and you'll be able to have a part-time design person. Like, would you prefer that? And a lot of times employees will say like, no, I would prefer another employee. And I don't know, making them part of that decision, I think has been really helpful for us as well.
Love that. Dennis, I'm curious with you. You're in Aruba, Miami, and Orlando. Does this ever play a big part of the conversation at the office with you guys?
Absolutely. And it's great to hear all those ratios, but we came to find that it's so hard to have a standard ratio for different destinations. For example, those oceanfront properties in Aruba, they're huge. They need so much more maintenance, and it takes so much longer to inspect and clean them than a home in Orlando or a condo in Miami. So it's you really have to look at the type of property that you have and the location. Another thing not to forget is, besides staffing, we have an amazing CFO. He comes up with budgets for everything. Controlling the rest of your spending, that's actually the easy part. But a lot of people just don't know what their budget is for guest amenities for the next year, or what they can spend at conferences. And yeah, then you get FOMO kicking in. You need to be there, and before you know it, you spend like a ridiculous amount on conferences or travel or other things, parties in our case, per year. So just by having a set budget in the beginning of the year and trying to stick to it has helped us getting costs down. The amount of revenue that each maintenance tech had to bring in per week, per day, we have targets for them. Each day they have a certain target to reach. Just by sharing that with them and showing them week after week, like, hey, you're this far away from your target, has helped improving our bottom line so much. So yeah, look at that too, not just the staffing, but what are they bringing in.
Yeah, shout out to Michael Scott, the man. He's a great CFO. I love getting WhatsApp messages from him. Got a couple today. Shout out to you. And now, Robin, before we let everyone go, anything for you on that conversation and that topic?
Yeah, I think it's it's again an evolution when you can talk about your business in terms of KPIs. So that concept that Megan mentioned there is exactly how we're also looking at hiring decisions. It gets that much easier when you know that you're heading towards a certain property count, what that's going to trigger. And I mean, it's natural that it should. You shouldn't be sitting there saying, well, just I realize we've taken on more homes, but you just have to fit that into your day. At some point, that's going to overstretch your staff, and you're going to end up with you don't want to be in a situation where you're going backwards, that people start quitting, and then you're in a double hiring situation when you should have hired somebody 6 months ago, and now you've got to hire 2 people. So that's all part of stabilizing your business. I think you need to have those KPIs on every area of the business. So you're looking at cost of sales, cost of marketing, because you need to have something that keeps you on track as you grow your business, because year over year is not really a good way to run your business. If your property count is growing by 10%, then some costs are going to follow that, and some costs are going to stay the same. Ideally, you're getting to a point where you're improving your profitability as you grow, but you've got to keep an eye on that, and one of the best ways is using KPIs.
Couldn't have said it better myself. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to join this roundtable. I honestly look up to all 4 of you so much, and the way you operate and the way you present yourselves in the industry. The reputations that you guys hold is all incredible. You're all amazing leaders, and I just want to say thank you. So for anyone who tuned in on the live, thank you again for tuning in. If you have more questions, feel free to email us at management@hospitality.fm. Love to answer your questions. And then if you're getting this on the podcast or the replay, shout out to all these guys, like and subscribe and do all the things that you're supposed to do. And until then, we'll see you on the next roundtable. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.